Patient involvement and engagement is a priority for life science companies like Pfizer. We need to make sure that our research questions are meeting the clinical needs, but also the patient's needs, both now and in the future. And my role is to support teams as they develop the protocol in optimizing the design of the study by connecting them with investigators and with patients to get that feedback. A study protocol is a document that describes the conduct of the clinical trial. It includes the objective or objectives of the study, the design of the actual clinical trial, the statistical considerations, the safety factors that need to be taken into consideration for participants that are taking part in the trial, and to ensure that we retain the integrity of the data that's being collected. It also consists of information around the practicalities of the clinical trial, such as how many times the patient might need to visit their doctor, how many times they may have to have blood samples taken or scans, for example, and how the study medication needs to be taken, such as with food or with water, and also if any medication has to be stopped if the patient takes part in the clinical trial. The benefits of engaging with patients early in the development of a protocol is key, because we can then shape the protocol design around the feedback that we receive from the patient. For example, does the clinical trial fit with the patient's lifestyle? Are we expected to enrol patients that may be working or at school, and we're asking them to come to a study visit for half a day? It's got to be practical and fit in with the patient's lifestyle. And at the end of the day, the patient is the expert on their disease. We need to answer our research question, but we need to balance it with the patient's needs. We at Pfizer have worked with the NIHR Patient Engagement Service for 2 of our clinical trials in the protocol and informed consent document development stage. Both protocols were enrolling paediatric and adult patients, and the first engagement we had with a young persons group, so young people between the ages of 11 and 21, and we were asking them particular questions around the informed consent document and their thoughts around the pictorial representations we were using in that document, and they gave us fabulous feedback which we ended up taking on board and using in the development of the informed consent document. The second engagement was also at Alder Hey Hospital in Liverpool, and that was with a group of caregivers, again for an atopic dermatitis paediatric and adult study. And the feedback we gained from that meeting was also incredibly useful in the development of the protocol. So much so that feedback around some of the prohibited medications were actually removed from the final protocol, and both studies are now open, and one is actively enrolling and the other soon will be. I would encourage any life science company to work with the NIHR CRN Patient Engagement Service. We at Pfizer have a requirement that all protocols have some form of patient engagement before being finalised. And through working with the NIHR, our legal and compliance groups from both sides, the Pfizer and the NIHR CRN side, have worked hard to ensure that we've covered all of the legal and compliant requirements, so that we now have a template letter of agreement that we at Pfizer plan to use again and again when we want to engage with patients through the NIHR CRN Patient Engagement Service, that I'm sure other life science organisations would be able to pick up and with very little amendment use.